During the release of the Shadow Conclave, Marvel Strike Force has said that they're running an experiment. I believe that this experiment runs a lot deeper than we might think and has been going on for longer than perhaps we have expected. Let's go ahead and break this down, as I think it's going to affect the future of the game. The most recent blog post told us that Malekith will be available on May 1st. At that time, this Shadow Conclave as a whole will be active if we've purchased those characters. The information shows that there is no indication that there will be power cores used for this unlock. That's fine. Where is this going though? What is significant about that date, this character? How is this going to affect the rest of Marvel Strike Force? So as mentioned, what that means is if we have indeed acquired Malekith at that time, we will have a completed version of the Shadow Conclave. That will happen once again on May 1st. Now, 3 days later, 3 days after that, what happens? The Age of Fear officially kicks off. We're in the preseason right now. We're in the prologue right now. But the actual big game, the actual big day, the kickoff for the Age of Fear is May 4th. And if we recall what we heard during the Strike Spot video, that day one of the Age of Fear, the Scourge will be active. Yes, day one, if we have this team, day one, we could have in our hands the newest legendary character, Breaker Silver Surfer. Now, everything we're going to say is speculation, but it seems that those individuals who have acquired this team at the various price points will perhaps be able to get a different version of that brand new legendary character. We remember there was a blog post that said that the Shadow Conclave would be vital in unlocking that legendary character. And as many in the community commented, the word that was used again was vital, not required. What does that mean? What does that indicate? The Shadow Conclave as a whole, all 5 members have the trait Cosmic Villain. That seems significant, right? They could have varied the traits. There's a reason why they made all 5 characters with that same trait. So perhaps when we look at the Scourge event, what's going to happen is the nodes where we would most effectively use the Shadow Conclave, they will be labeled Cosmic Villain. Perhaps the word Shadow Conclave will not appear in the new event. Otherwise, why make sure that all the characters have the same trait? They're an Alliance War team. They're not a raid team. They don't need to be pigeonholed into a lane, so to speak, unless that lane, again, fairly broad, but they would be the best choice in that particular area. If we look at the cosmic villains that we have available to us, are there people here that would assist in making a good team? Yeah, there are a lot of people here that would assist in making a good team. The downside is many of the characters we have not used for quite some time, especially if, because this is an Alliance War team, if there are war traits built into the node, once again, that would make the Shadow Conclave the most effective team out there. We do, again, recall, during the Strike Spot, it seems that they don't want to gate people by basic things like you have to have this many stars, this much ISO, that they want to try to do more of gating for power. Not necessarily skill, but power. Shadow Conclave is the strongest team to come out so far, significantly head and shoulders better than a lot of other teams we've had in recent time. And this is a new stat era, so there's a lot of stronger characters now that could be used. But when it comes to this trait, Cosmic Villain, there's not a lot of characters here that we have used recently. So unless we're spending large amounts of money, we might not have much to choose from if we're building a team outside of the Shadow Conclave. Now that would mean, again, if they're not going to gate by power, that this would just be a point that would drop people's ability to participate. And what I say by that is we would probably have to drop the difficulty down, maybe not use as many scourges, and it just gives an inherent advantage to people who did invest in that team. It seems, once again, I'm getting the feeling at least that they're not trying to necessarily lock people out, but they do want to give people rewards based on their investment and the power of their overall roster. So then perhaps without the Shadow Conclave, once again, especially if the node has war traits on it. We would not be able to crank the difficulty up as high. We wouldn't be able to score as many points, meaning that when we do get through it, we would have a weaker version of the legendary character. There are some great picks here, though, that people have invested in the past. And this is where we want to pay attention. How deep does the rabbit hole actually go? So we think about Dormammu here. Many people bring him in the game to get that revive once. But especially over the past 6 months, there has been a number of characters on every second or third team, perhaps, that simply say characters cannot revive. And when we're dealing with when we're dealing with Scourge nodes, right, we're not talking about 5 characters on the opposing side. It can be 20, 30, 40 characters. So there's tons of people that could drop in from time to time and simply just say, no, you cannot revive. What about the Super Skrull? A lot of times he's being considered as well. We definitely recognize pretty much every team that has come out in the past 6 months has had an individual on it that says you cannot manipulate speed bar. If that happens, that basically makes Super Skrull, right? He's not usable. That's his claim to fame. That's his trait. So if the speed is turned off, he just becomes another ordinary person. What about Mephisto? Well, again, we've seen a lot of characters over the past couple months that in some way, shape, or form just kind of stop him from doing what he wants to do. They don't necessarily take him out of the match completely, but making it so early he can't get that empowered basic going. Individuals who are allowed to place ability blocks and stuns on the person just because of his traits. Now, that also could be very interesting, right? If the trait is villain cosmic and somebody just inherently can negate something that you do, they can automatically put a ability block or something like that on your character. If we don't have immunity, that could be a problem. The Shadow Conclave generates a lot of those protections innately. So perhaps without that, it's just going to be more difficult to get through. And of course, there is Annihilus. The overwhelming majority of the community is not going to have him. But perhaps those who did invest in him are going to have an even easier time getting through or getting a higher score. Now, obviously, the way to really put a lot of this stuff away is to simply not allow mythic characters. So if mythic characters were not allowed, who else could be used to maybe help get through? Well, what about Null? He's not a mythic character. We use him a lot for plug and play. But I'm sure we've all noticed that it seems almost immediately after he came into the game, teams continually have members on them that somehow interact with the darkness ability. They ignore darkness. They flip it to some positive effect or something of that nature, right? There's a lot of characters that do that. Is that a coincidence? Or is this something that has kind of been planned for quite some time? Again, this wouldn't negate us being able to use him. It just makes us turn the difficulty down until we would have a strong enough Shadow Conclave to punch through. So perhaps we're asking the question, why would they be doing this? Again, I would say the answer can be found inside of that Strike Spot video. The gentleman in the Strike Spot video, over the course of conversation, used words like competitive in 1 month when talking about the legendary release. Again, this is speculation on my part. At no time did he say there would only be a 1 month competitive window for the legendary character. That's not what was said. But in the manner of conversation, they did indeed use the words 1 month and competitive when referring to the legendary character. So I'm thinking that what is going to happen is for that first opening month, that will be, once again, the competitive version of the event. There, people can compete and try to get those high red stars, diamonds, perhaps even somebody, one person, perhaps get a 5 diamond on the brand new legendary character, Silver Surfer Breaker. This is in line with the pattern we have seen when it comes to events recently. They have a big dog event, give somebody a big dog prize, and then those things end up later on in a different leaderboard for individuals who want to spend and try to chase that again. And it just takes time to trickle down to the free-to-play community. So what I'm saying is this. Let's start tying this all together. Malekith comes out May 1st. 3 days later, on May 4th, the Fear event begins. The Age of Fear officially starts. And now we have our first legendary character, the breaker, Silver Surfer, that we can go after in a Scourge event. Now, I'm not saying that the Scourge event will only last 1 month. What I'm saying is the competitive version could probably last 1 month, right? It should go from chapter to chapter. So it should be a 3-month window that the event is active for us to unlock the legendary character. But if we were to get in early with a strong character, that would incentivize, right, people to continue this pattern that you do indeed get something for pushing faster. Speed and power matter. But what about the free-to-play players, right? Since everything started here with the High Evolutionary, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of concern about what's going on in the free-to-play community. But I don't think really we should be panicking. We need to once again understand what is going on. Allow me a few more minutes to explain the context of what it looks like is happening. Let's take a minute to look back. Our past predicts our future. So we have to go back and remind ourselves that there was a core adjustment, right? Adjustment to the power core economy between Annihilator and the Orcus release. There it was told, we were standardized that new characters would come out on day 1. 2 months later, there'd be a 2-month gap. Those characters would enter the free-to-play release window. A lot of people were put off by that, but there was a very, very important point that was made. The engaged player, so to speak, would be able to shorten that time. That was intended. That's something that Scopely wants. They want you, even as a free-to-play player, if you're playing aggressively, to also have some reward. And the reward that they gave us at that time is, once again, we could shorten that window. We were using power cores to unlock the characters. It took time, but in most cases, we would shrink that window and be able to unlock that character 1 month after the paid release. The spender still had exclusivity. We got ahead of other free-to-play players, but our teams weren't so robust that we could really compete super hard with the guys who were spending a lot of money. But over the course of the game, maybe because people were leaving, right, the player base shrinking, individuals who are still being competitive were able to more easily get a hold of those power cores. And so now the result is we can unlock brand new characters day 1 for free. That's something that has been going on for some time. The power core adjustment, the power core orbs have now been removed, as it looks like that's part of the experiment, from the initial release method. But let's try to see the other pieces of the puzzle, other things that might be going on. If indeed these characters remain at 45 shard unlocks, that means we will have an advantage as well when it comes to unlocking the character free to play. It will be easier for us to do that. When would that be available for us to do? Well, there's been lots of adjustments to the game since the time we were talking about with the Annihilators and Orcus. One of those adjustments has been the chapter store, and new characters enter the chapter store approximately 1 month after the paid release. This does not seem to be a coincidence. Once again, paid release, 2 months later, free to play release. But for the engaged player, there is allowance to shrink that time. And I believe that the chapter store has now taken that place, that this is the approved method of early unlock. Yes, they're going to bar us from being able to do it faster than that. The approved method, free to play, will be the chapter store. However, there is a word of caution. Obviously, we would need to use our chapter currency in order to unlock these characters, right? We could use power cores to refresh the store to try to keep getting more and more of those character shards. The unlocks would be easier if they're coming out at 45 shards, right? That reduces the time by half that would take us to unlock the character in the first place. However, it does tax our chapter store currency. And one of the more important things that are available in the chapter store is gear tier 20. So we need that to bring our characters up to 20. We can hasten that, I should say, by using the store to bring them up to 20 as well. These are the same pieces in many respects that we need to go to 21. We just need more of them. So it looks like there's going to be a conundrum. It's either speed or power. It might be difficult to do both. Maybe there's a way. We're going to have to, again, this is all speculative, but we're going to have to see. In addition to that, remember the dates are important. If the character comes out here and 1 month later, they're available in the store, what does that mean for unlocking the new breaker character, Silver Surfer? Well, on the free-to-play side, That would indicate that if things hold true, just as the spender community had about 3 days between the unlock and the actual kickoff of the event, it's very, very possible that there will be about 3 days between the introduction of the last Shadow Conclave member to the chapter store and the end of the competitive window when it comes to that new breaker Scourge. So again, we would still have an opportunity to get involved in the competitive portion if what we're saying is true. Again, we would be limited by time. Our window of opportunity would be lowered. So again, all this is speculative, but this seems to be where the game is going. This seems to be, again, the evidence that I have just thinking about things. If you think it's going to go differently, I would like to hear what you have to say. I definitely want to know what you're feeling out there as an individual, right? There's a lot of things happening in the community. As always, one of the things we want to stress on this channel is the game does care about free-to-play players. Keep in mind, many of the individuals who complain about what's happening in the free-to-play community are not free-to-play players, and the advice that they have given over time has been wrong, period. Now, this is speculation. Half what we're saying could be incorrect, but this seems to be the course of travel where the game is headed. If you find that there might be an alternate way of doing things, let me know. Let's talk about it in the comments below. But I'm looking forward to getting my Silver Surfer Breaker. He's coming to us free to play either way. It just might take a little bit more time. If you haven't seen these videos right here, though, please check them out. They're legit.